welcome to the 2021 Spring Commencement of Cuyahoga Community College. My name is Tom Lyon, Assistant Professor Emeritus, History and Political Science, and I have the honor of serving as the Faculty Marshal for this virtual celebration. It is my pleasure to welcome the Reverend Dr. Terry Webb, pastor of the Christian Unity Baptist Church, who will offer the invocation. This will be followed by the playing of the National Anthem by acclaimed trumpeter and Tri-C alum Dominic Farinacci, who now serves as the director of the Tri-C Jazz Fest Academy.
We ask, dear God, that you continue the work you have started in each student to stoke the fire of determination that keeps them on the road to sustained success. May God continue to grant you all the grace to stay faithful to your commitments and confident in your ability to accomplish all your life goals. Most gracious, most merciful God, who walks beside us all of our lives, we pray that you continue to let us all be beacons of hope and promise to a broken world, a world in need of each of you, a world that is waiting on you to succeed because you can and you will. Amen.
Good evening, and welcome to your much-deserved commencement of the Cuyahoga Community College class of 2021. I would like to thank Dr. Terry Webb for the invocation. I am grateful also to Tom Lyon, our faculty marshal and assistant professor emeritus of history and political science from the Western campus, and to Dominic Farinacci for his moving rendition of our national anthem. It is my honor to join you, your family, and friends in recognizing this landmark moment in your life. I am delighted to acknowledge your teachers and staff who are here to celebrate with you. Now there are 3 points I want to convey that hopefully will instill lasting pride in your achievement. First, I want to congratulate you for achieving your academic goals and for persevering through the extreme test of the global pandemic. You will be remembered as a group that confronted challenge head-on, remaining steadfast in your commitment to educational excellence. Second, you will be honored also as the class earning the highest number of degrees and certificates in the history of the institution, over 4,600. And third, thank you for inspiring us to move at warp speed to transform teaching methodology, mostly to a virtual format, without sacrificing the quality of your experience. In 2016, First Lady Michelle Obama said to the graduates of the City College of New York, "It is important for you to understand that your experience facing and overcoming adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages." Now, you may not realize it, but the past year has given you this advantage, providing an invaluable lesson that will serve you steadfastly as you continue at a four-year institution, enter the workforce, or face life's ebbs and flows. I am so very proud of you and humbled by your extraordinary commitment to yourself, your family, and your college, Cuyahoga Community College. Thank you for choosing Tri-C. Now, in just a few minutes, you will hear from Dr. Robert Johnson, Chair of the Joint Faculty Senate Council and Professor of Counseling, and our Provost, Dr. Karen Miller. Both are eager to congratulate you on your accomplishment. We are privileged this evening to bestow honorary degrees upon two distinguished members of the community, Ms. Beth Mooney, retired Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of KeyCorp, and Mr. Tim Tramble, President and CEO of the St. Luke's Foundation. Both of these individuals have been champions of higher education in Northeast Ohio and steadfast in their commitment to the college and the students we serve. You will hear more about these prominent individuals later in the program. And now, to begin our celebratory remarks, it is my privilege to introduce the chair of the Cuyahoga Community College Board of Trustees, Mr. Andrew Randall.
Good evening. On behalf of the Cuyahoga Community College Board of Trustees, welcome to our college commencement for spring 2021. I speak for my colleagues on the board, Helen Forbes Fields, Vice Chair, Ann Frangos, David Heller, the Reverend Corey Jenkins, Phoebe Lee, Geraldine Presti, Victor Ruiz, and John Scory, in saying this evening represents one of the many reasons we are proud to serve this institution. This evening is all about you. I congratulate you for your achievement of completing your associate degrees or certificates. You have persevered through some of the most challenging times, and now you are seeing the results of your efforts. So many possibilities await you, and we are committed to helping more of your classmates join you as alumni of this college. Our congratulations and best wishes follow you to your next endeavor. Now I'd like to ask Dr. Alex Johnson, our president, to return to introduce our student speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Randall. It is now my honor to introduce Julie Marie Wetzel, our student speaker, who is representing the entire graduating class. Julie is graduating summa cum laude with an Associate of Arts degree focused in art therapy. She also plans to receive a Creative Arts Certificate in art therapy. Julie graduated from Cloverleaf High School and the Medina County Career Center in spring 2019 and began attending Tri-C the following fall. While at Tri-C, Julie was the recipient of 3 scholarships, was in the honors program, and held an office in the Chi Omega chapter of Phi Theta Kappa at the Western Campus. She served as the president of Tri-Cities chapter of Circle K International, has been an officer in the Tri-C Art Club, and has participated in the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship at the college as well. Julie plans to transfer to a four-year institution in the fall with the goal to eventually earn a master's degree. It is now my pleasure to welcome Julie to the lectern.
Good evening, class of 2021 graduates, faculty, staff, and guests. My name is Julie Wetzel, and it is an honor to represent the class of 2021 as the student commencement speaker. I'd like to thank God for allowing us to be here today to celebrate our accomplishments together. I'd like to thank Tri-C for a wonderful 2 years, in addition to the professors, mentors, and staff who have guided me and the rest of the class of 2021 along our journey that led us to be here today. Thank you to my family, friends, and others for their support as well. The class of 2021. This is an outstanding group of people. Les Brown once said, "You must tell yourself, no matter how hard it is or how hard it gets, I'm going to make it." This quote represents the class of 2021 quite well. When we started pursuing our education at Tri-C, we did not know what was to come. A global pandemic struck, alongside civil and social unrest, sparking conversations about equity, equality, and justice. Perhaps you have lost a loved one, a job, or the lost opportunity of celebrating a wedding or school-related event. Yet, we transitioned to remote learning, learned how to navigate Zoom and WebEx, and learned to use our unmute button before we speak. We reconstructed our day-to-day lives almost entirely from inside our homes. Even though we were socially distanced, we were not isolated. We found connection. How many community murals have you seen painted on buildings and streets within this past year? How many of you have made a TikTok? How many of you picked up a hobby or adopted a pet? It would have been easy among all that has been thrown at us to walk away and quit, but we didn't give up. We found light in the darkness. We pushed through to the end, and that is something that we should be very proud of. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Our resiliency through these unpredictable times demonstrates our leadership and character. We are all leaders in this sense. I encourage you to take your leadership qualities wherever your next chapter is and push further. Break your boundaries. As the legendary David Bowie once said, always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. We have all had our feet not quite touching the bottom this year. We have all been through the good and the bad. As Bowie instructed, let's continue to push our boundaries and strive for our maximum potential to reap the harvest of more success, proving that we can endure anything. Today's accomplishment is a great chapter in our lives. Let's go out into this world and start a new one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie, for your inspiring remarks. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Robert Johnson, Professor of Counseling and the Chairperson of the Joint Faculty Senate Council, to join me at the other lectern.
Dr. Johnson, it is my pleasure to recommend two distinguished members of the community for the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, Beth E Mooney and Timothy L. Tramble, Sr. Beth Mooney is the retired chairman and chief executive officer of Key Corp. Throughout her 40-year career in financial services and banking, Ms. Mooney has actively partnered with community nonprofits and educational institutions to promote economic development and support education throughout Northeast Ohio. A graduate of the University of Texas, she received an MBA from Southern Methodist University in 2006. Ms. Mooney joined Key Corp as Vice Chair of Key Community Bank, becoming Chair and CEO of Key Corp in 2011. Ms. Mooney has championed local education and workforce training, allowing Key Bank to become a valued partner in many projects with Tri-C. Examples include Key Bank's investment in the Key Bank Public Safety Education Training Initiative, allowing Tri-C to expand and enhance public safety education and training programs. Key Bank is also a major sponsor of the annual Presidential Scholarship Luncheon and has been integral in growing Tri-C's Jazz Fest into a destination festival. Numerous organizations have recognized Beth Mooney for her professional and community work, including Forbes magazine, one of the world's 100 most powerful women, and Fortune magazine identified her as one of the top 50 most powerful women in business. She was also awarded the Women of Note Legacy Award from the Cleveland Foundation for her outstanding business, civic, and philanthropic leadership in Greater Cleveland. Dr. Johnson, I present to you Ms. Beth E Mooney.
As president of Cuyahoga Community College, I confer upon Ms. Beth E Mooney the honorary doctorate of humane letters with all the honors, rights, and privileges appertaining thereto. Upon the approval of the State of Ohio and the Board of Trustees of Cuyahoga Community College District, this diploma is presented bearing the college seal in Cleveland, Ohio, on this 9th day of June, 2021. I am now honored to invite Ms. Mooney to offer brief remarks.
First, I want to begin by extending a sincere and heartfelt congratulations to all of today's graduates and the family, friends, and mentors who proudly stand beside them and have lifted them up on their journey. For more than 2 decades, lifting community members on their journeys to earn college credentials and learn new skills has also been at the core of Key Bank and Tri-C's partnership. Together, we've worked side by side to create more prosperous communities for all, while supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion across our region and in our workforce. This partnership has empowered more people of color and women to enter into public safety careers, increased graduation rates, and built a more diverse pipeline of workers who can meet the demands of our region and of our future. We also expanded opportunities for our youth to experience the arts and provided access to education for the Hispanic population and other community members. And this is just a snapshot into what is possible when community leaders come together with transformational resources to support those with the dream, drive, and dedication to move forward. Whether we're in an economic downturn or a fiscal boom, the Key Bank and Tri-C team never quit. After all, Tri-C's simple but life-changing promise is Tri-C, where futures begin. And it is not lost on me that you never quit either. To be graduating on the heels of 2020, a year with countless challenges and obstacles, it's not lost on me or anyone here the immense and unique barriers you likely faced to arrive here today. And despite them all, you didn't quit. Your grit and determination have earned you this remarkable achievement. Enjoy it. Take a victory lap, but make no mistake, with great opportunity also comes an obligation. You are now part of a critical response team because you are the future of our communities. Our caregivers, servant leaders, designers, creators, thinkers, and innovators, the cornerstones and game changers who will advance safety, healing, prosperity, and growth for us all. And as a graduate of Tri-C, you have both the opportunity and the obligation to lead us forward to a better, brighter future. And you have the opportunity and the obligation to carry as you climb so that all who follow are inspired to dream, to stretch, and to achieve. As a graduate of Tri-C, you are the difference makers and the future shapers, and it is my honor to celebrate each and every one of you today. And I want to offer a special congratulations to your loved ones who supported you along the way. And finally, I want to thank Tri-C and Dr. Alex Johnson for this honorary degree. It is a privilege to be associated with an institution and a team that I admire and respect, an institution and a team that are a regional treasure. So thank you, Tri-C, and congratulations to all of today's graduates.
And now, I am honored to recommend our second honorary degree recipient, Mr. Timothy L. Tramble, Sr. Timothy Tramble, Sr. currently serves as President and Chief Executive Officer of the St. Luke's Foundation, overseeing efforts to create health and social equity, not only in the neighborhoods surrounding St. Luke's Hospital, but throughout the region. Born in Cleveland, Mr. Tramble is a graduate of CMSD's East High School. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science from Central State University, as well as a Master of Public Administration and graduate certificate in nonprofit management from Cleveland State University. Prior to joining St. Luke's Foundation, Mr. Tramble served as Executive Director of Burton Bell Carr Development Incorporated, BBC, a nonprofit community development corporation dedicated to empowering residents and revitalizing underserved neighborhoods in the heart of Cleveland. Prior to joining the St. Luke's Foundation, Mr. Tramble served as Executive Director of Burton Bell Carr Development Incorporated, BBC, a nonprofit community development corporation dedicated to empowering residents and revitalizing underserved neighborhoods in the heart of Cleveland. During his tenure at BBC, Mr. Tramble's efforts in the central neighborhood allowed him to partner closely with Tri-Ci's Metropolitan Campus on a variety of projects and initiatives. BBC created the Neighborhood Landscape Enterprise, a social enterprise that not only employs neighborhood youth to beautify residential, vacant, and commercial properties, but provides a pathway for participants to enter Tri-Ci's Plant Science and Landscaping Technology program. BBC also partnered with the college on its Healthy Eating Initiative, with faculty and students from Tri-Ci's Dietetic Technology program providing instruction on healthy cooking and eating for local senior citizens. Dr. Johnson, I present to you Mr. Timothy L. Tramble, Sr.
As president of Cuyahoga Community College, I confer upon Mr. Timothy L. Tramble, Sr., the Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters, with all the honors, rights, and privileges appertaining thereto. Upon the approval of the State of Ohio and the Board of Trustees of Cuyahoga Community College District, this diploma is presented bearing the college seal in Cleveland, Ohio on the 9th day of June, 2021. I am now honored to invite Mr. Tramble to offer brief remarks.
To the well-accomplished faculty and staff, to the distinguished Board of Trustees of Cuyahoga Community College, to the resilient and strong student body and graduating class of 2021, and to the Honorable Dr. Alex Johnson, I want to thank you all for this moment and thank you all for this extraordinary honor. This is more about this wonderful institution than it is about me. Who am I? I am an individual who was born and raised on East 81st in Superior, a graduate of CMSD East High School, an individual that made the choice at 18 years old that I was going to dedicate my career to my community and that I was going to live within my community, regardless of how successful I become and raise my family. So again, this says more about you than it does about me. Dr. Johnson, I want to thank you for being an extraordinary leader of Northeast Ohio. I want to thank you and the institution for being an extraordinary model of excellence for our country. And I want to thank you, Dr. Johnson, for being a leader, an African-American leader that uplift and support other African-American leaders. This is an example of that. To the graduating class, my message for you is that as you go out into your professional careers and you may experience a struggle, do understand that there is no formula for success without a struggle. So just remember that all it is doing, it is strengthening your armor, it is sharpening your sword, and it is giving you more tools in your toolbox to deal with the things that you will have to deal with in your inevitable success. And we know that with success comes more money and more problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney and Mr. Tramble. On behalf of a very grateful Cuyahoga Community College family, we thank you for giving us the privilege of recognizing you this evening. At this time, I invite Dr. Karen Miller, Provost and Executive Vice President, to the lectern.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. It is now time to recognize our outstanding honors graduates. Each of them has demonstrated their commitment to academic achievement and excellence. The honor of cum laude is bestowed upon students who have maintained a grade point average of 3.5 to 3.69. The honor of magna cum laude is bestowed upon students who've maintained a grade point average of 3.7 to 3.89. The honor of summa cum laude is bestowed upon students who have maintained a grade point average of 3.9 to 4.0. This is our top honor category. At this time, we'd like to recognize all of our honor graduates for their outstanding achievement. I now invite Dr. Robert Johnson to present the candidates for graduation.
As chairperson of the Joint Faculty Senate and on behalf of the Cuyahoga Community College faculty, I am pleased to present to you the candidates for graduation who have been certified eligible to receive the Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, Associate of Applied Science, Associate of Applied Business, and the Associate of Technical Studies degrees, and those who have completed certificates of study. Faculty, I ask that you now congratulate our candidates for graduation.
I'd now like to ask Dr. Alex Johnson to step to the other lectern. As Provost and Executive Vice President for Access, Learning, and Success, and on behalf of the faculty and administration, I present to you the candidates for the Associate of Arts degree, Associate of Science degree, Associate of Applied Science degree, Associate of Applied Business degree, Associate of Technical Studies degree, and certificates of study.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Cuyahoga Community College District and the State of Ohio, I accept the candidates for the Associate of Arts degree, the Associate of Science degree, the Associate of Applied Science degree, the Associate of Applied Business degree, the Associate of Technical Studies degree, and certificates of study. I now present our candidates for graduation.
Samer Abbas, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Nina Abercrombie, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Ian Abumathkur, Associate of Science. Fada Bun, Associate of Science. Danya Abuzari, Associate of Science. Aditi Aditya, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Darshana Aditya, Associate of Science, cum laude. Alayemi Adabot, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Samantha Agresta, Associate of Science, cum laude. S. Shahir Ahmed, Associate of Science, cum laude. Mujtaba Alabadi, Associate of Science. Sarah Aldawamna, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Youssef Al-Bashidi, Associate of Science. Kelly Albright, Associate of Science. Nima Aldabaishi, Associate of Science. Doha Ali, Associate of Science. Saif Eldin Ali, Associate of Science. Colton Allen, Associate of Science. Nur Al-Nizarwi, Associate of Science. Magna cum laude. Saria Lothman, Associate of Science. Magna cum laude. Maxwell Alpert, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Alden Anderson, Associate of Science. Luke Anderson, Associate of Science. Cassidy Andrijkak, Associate of Science. Faith Ong, Associate of Science. Magna cum laude. Farah Akel, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Jasmine Arnold, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Toy Arnold, Associate of Science. Miguel Areola, Associate of Science. Malik Osroff, Associate of Science. Magna cum laude. Ree Matier, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Charlie Ayala, Associate of Science. Alina Babar, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Noah Baston, Associate of Science. Alexis Ballant, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Inez Barkley, Associate of Science. Cameron Bates, Associate of Science. Cassandra Bako, Associate of Science. Aaron Bell, Associate of Science. Joe Bellini, Associate of Science. Magna cum laude. Rebecca Bemer, Associate of Science. Caitlin Berg, Associate of Science. Eunice Bikawi, Associate of Science. Salim Bitho, Associate of Science. Elizabeth Black, Associate of Science. John Blasco, Associate of Science. Summa cum laude. Caleb Blazek, Associate of Science. Summa cum laude. Acua Bodhi, Associate of Science. Mache Boc, Associate of Science. Alicia Body, Associate of Science. Cum laude. Michelle Bogard, Associate of Science. Ashton Borelli, Associate of Science. Kelsey Boron, Associate of Science. Summa cum laude. Christopher Brott, Associate of Science. Julia Bravo, Associate of Science. Letitia Brazel, Associate of Science. Kristen Brown, Associate of Science. Madison Brugnon, Associate of Science. Ellen Bryant, Associate of Science. Summa cum laude. Gregory Beener, Associate of Science. Sarah Bumbules, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Xander Bunn, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Tabitha Barak, Associate of Science. Maryam Kaleem Butt, Associate of Science. Sharice Callahan, Associate of Science. Taylor Campbell, Associate of Science. Sebastian Canales, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Mary Caprinolo, Associate of Science. Victoria Carner, Associate of Science. Megan Carew, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Matthew Chada, Associate of Science, cum laude. Samnang Shamron, Associate of Science, cum laude. Martha Chavez, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. David Chen, Associate of Science. Jasmine Childress, Associate of Science. Luana Christian, Associate of Science, cum laude. Kylie Cienciola, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Lydia Siobanu, Associate of Science, cum laude. Ariel Clark, Associate of Science. Jacob Clark, Associate of Science. Vince Claudio, Associate of Science. Xavier Clemens, Associate of Science. Brooke Klukas, Associate of Science. Maya Coker, Associate of Science. Michelle Coleman, Associate of Science. Sierra Coleman, Associate of Science. Ryan Croft, Associate of Science. Derek Crow, Associate of Science. Brianna Cruz, Associate of Science. Raul Cummings, Associate of Science. Alan Daniels, Associate of Science. Nage Davenport Jr., Associate of Science. Brittany Demeter, Associate of Science. Hannah Demkowitz, Associate of Science, cum laude. Taylor Desmont, Associate of Science. Haley Dyens, Associate of Science. Rana Dole, Associate of Science. Valerie Dolman, Associate of Science. Peter Draganik IV, Associate of Science. Mary Driscoll, Associate of Science. Geneva Duncan, Associate of Science. Joy Effo, Associate of Science. Alexandria Elias Weber, Associate of Science. Muhammad El-Khatib, Associate of Science. Donald Ellis Jr., Associate of Science. Owen Elswick, Associate of Science. Promise Endre, Associate of Science. Isa Farah, Associate of Science. Noura Faraj, Associate of Science, cum laude. Antonio Fernandez, Associate of Science. Anthony Ferraro II, Associate of Science. Hamdan Faisa, Associate of Science. Marko Filipovic, Associate of Science. Jessica Flanders, Associate of Science. Blanca Flores Robinson, Associate of Science. Jacob Forrester, Associate of Science. Brian Foster, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Mahogany Foy, Associate of Science. Shannon Frabel, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Samantha Franco, Associate of Science. Jurissa Fruits, Associate of Science. Rachel Fuston, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Tierney Gabriel, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Allison Galek, Associate of Science. Marsh Gary, Associate of Science. Lauren Gedeon, Associate of Science. Mark Gazel, Associate of Science. John Gibbons II, Associate of Science. Olivia Glenser, Associate of Science. Samuel Gouch, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Mike Grantonic, Associate of Science, cum laude. Jonah Gray, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Amber Green, Associate of Science. Katie Griffin, Associate of Science. Kelly Grosbich, Associate of Science. Bobby Gross, Associate of Science. Julia Grzep, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Margarita Gaidui, Associate of Science. Adam Holler, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Saja Hamad, Associate of Science, cum laude. Miracle Harris, Associate of Science. Monica Harris, Associate of Science. Marika Hassan, Associate of Science. Sarah Haynes, Associate of Science, cum laude. Ciela Henderson, Associate of Science, cum laude. Amy Henry, Associate of Science. Lauren Hill, Associate of Science. Zri Hitchcock, Associate of Science. Natalie Josevar, Associate of Science. Michael Hoffman, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Chloe Halker, Associate of Science. Virginia Holtwick, Associate of Science. Logan Horvat, Associate of Science. Brianna Hunter, Associate of Science. Ollie Jaffrey, Associate of Science. Lean Jalad, Associate of Science. Jacqueline Jankowski, Associate of Science. Cassandra Jindra, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Ariana Job, Associate of Science. Nicholas Johnson, Associate of Science. Chantel Johnson, Associate of Science. Daniel Young, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Allison Justice, Associate of Science, cum laude. Aisha Kaba, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Karunji Kabasik, Associate of Science. Cody Kaiser, Associate of Science. Brian Casper, Associate of Science. Emily Kaspersky, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Diane Kavalchek, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Ryan Kendrick, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Hidayah Khalaf, Associate of Science. Haneen Khaled, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Janae Kirk, Associate of Science. Emily Knight, Associate of Science. Rachel Kalota, Associate of Science, cum laude. Miranda Kovac, Associate of Science. Camille Kronk, Associate of Science, cum laude. Jessica Krasinski, Associate of Science, cum laude. Karen Lamba, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Jessica Lasso, Associate of Science. Tyandria Laster, Associate of Science. Melinda Levine, Associate of Science. Courtney Layton, Associate of Science. Eugene Lee, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Sydney Leon, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Christiana Likos, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Cameron Lip, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Sarah Lippert, Associate of Science. Angela Long, Associate of Science. Isaiah Lopez, Associate of Science. Allison Lopresti, Associate of Science. Zachary Lozanak, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Matthew Macias, Associate of Science, cum laude. Brooke Matichik, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Cynthia Mataluno, Associate of Science. Ahmad Mafarja, Associate of Science. Maxim Makar, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Fatin Mansour, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Omar Mansour, Associate of Science. Tamira Marable, Associate of Science. Enrique Mares, Associate of Science. Ramir Martin, Rumir Martin, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Jayed Mashriki, Associate of Science. Malia Massingil, Associate of Science. Amy Matthews, Associate of Science. Natty Mathker, Associate of Science. Elizabeth Maxwell, Associate of Science. Chanel Maynard, Associate of Science. Thomas McGinnis, Associate of Science, Summa Cum Laude. Aaron McGinty, Associate of Science. Alexis McKellar, Associate of Science. Abdul McKinney, Associate of Science. Cameron McKinney, Associate of Science. Gabrielle McMahon, Associate of Science. Nicholas Mead, Associate of Science, Summa Cum Laude. Matthew Mendez, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Bishoy Minkarius, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Nina Mesh, Associate of Science. Hex Sandra Mihan Goes, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Brandon Miller, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Jordan Miller, Associate of Science. Samuel Miri II, Associate of Science. Anna Macho, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Jenna Marie Sampson Maligno, Associate of Science. Katie Molman, Associate of Science. Tyler Monastra, Associate of Science. Abigail Mondragon, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Letitia Montez, Associate of Science. Katrina Montgomery, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Brendan Moran, Associate of Science. Christopher Morris, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Janisha Mosesley, Associate of Science. Jasmine Mosley, Associate of Science. Zakiya Moss, Associate of Science. Tyler Moten, Associate of Science. Mostafa Mualim, Associate of Science. Beatrice Mugongo, Associate of Science. Daniel Mulcahy, Associate of Science, Magna Cum Laude. Joe Murphy, Associate of Science. Jenna Mustafa, Associate of Science. Amanda Myers, Associate of Science, Cum Laude. Victoria Nagarniak, Associate of Science, Summa Cum Laude. Sandis Najjar, Associate of Science, Summa Cum Laude. Nicole Najpaver, Associate of Science. Eric Napoleon Jr., Associate of Science. Jacqueline Napoli, Associate of Science. Leonid Negomedzianov, Associate of Science. Brooke Nekic, Associate of Science, cum laude. Jennifer Nelson, Associate of Science. Binid Nembang, Associate of Science, cum laude. Lydia Nepal, Associate of Science. Jacqueline Newman, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Samantha Niewiadomski, Associate of Science. Danielle Nimrichter, Associate of Science. Ja El Nawar, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Judith Norman, Associate of Science. Mark Norris, Associate of Science. Sophia Nystrom, Associate of Science. Fola Shado Besa, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Muhammad Odatala, Associate of Science. Zaid Odatala, Associate of Science. Bisan Okal, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Stephen Owens, Associate of Science. Jessica Pang, Associate of Science. Christy Parker, Associate of Science. Alex Pisanen, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Dhruval Patel, Associate of Science. Tracy Patterson, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Keziah Pauley, Associate of Science, cum laude. Christian Pedersen, Associate of Science, cum laude. Stephanie Perez Sanchez, Associate of Science. Rebecca Petrie, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Danielle Pinder, Associate of Science. Teresa Politachko, Associate of Science, cum laude. Sadie Polina, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Joseph Ponikvar Jr., Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Antonio Pritchard, Associate of Science, cum laude. Caitlin Prorock, Associate of Science. Jeffrey Przakocki, Associate of Science. Diana Putz, Associate of Science. Miriam Rod, Associate of Science. Buddha Rai, Associate of Science. Yuvaraj Rai, Associate of Science. Divija Rajaraman, Associate of Science. New Raman Kumar, Associate of Science. Marika Ranch, Associate of Science. Asma Rashid, Associate of Science. Michaela Ratz, Associate of Science. Nasharia Ray, Associate of Science. Mason Reich, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. David Resigi, Associate of Science, cum laude. Jacqueline Reed-Thaler, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Julia Regard, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Joanne Riglow, Associate of Science. Margaret Rivera, Associate of Science. Idenise Roney, Associate of Science. Gabriella Rovner, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Beth Rowell, Associate of Science, cum laude. Alexandra Russ, Associate of Science, cum laude. Rafia Sajed, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Ela Salome, Associate of Science. Rania Saleh, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Rand Salem, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Kelly Salerno, Associate of Science. Riley Saunders, Associate of Science, cum laude. Nicholas Sauto, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Vanessa Scales, Associate of Science. Amanda Scalziti, Associate of Science. Russell Schiavone, Associate of Science, cum laude. Christopher Schmidt, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Paul Scondia, Associate of Science. Jennifer Sharp, Associate of Science. Jacob Shaver, Associate of Science. Irene Shockey, Associate of Science, cum laude. Shika Shi, Associate of Science. Michael Shiner, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. David Skachko, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Callista Skutnik, Associate of Science. Nicole Slavic, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Faith Smerkovsky, Associate of Science. Uliana Smedina, Associate of Science. Chris Smith, Associate of Science, cum laude. Tracy Smith, Associate of Science. Julia Saltis, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Alena Sukup, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Selena Spencer, Associate of Science. Jamie Squires-Doss, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Lyudmila Stefanovich, Associate of Science, cum laude. River Stepp, Associate of Science, cum laude. Dragana Stepanovic, Associate of Science. Christiana Stover, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Kayla Streets, Associate of Science. Matthew Strickland, Associate of Science. Rebecca Struck, Associate of Science. Haneen Suleiman, Associate of Science. Charday Swain, Associate of Science. Megan Swanson, Associate of Science. Gerald Switzer, Associate of Science. Caitlin Sidorenko, Associate of Science. Sadia Syed, Associate of Science. Samuel Talpaz, Associate of Science. Miranda Talton, Associate of Science. Kate Tarnowski, Associate of Science. Muhammad Tay, Associate of Science. Amy Taylor, Associate of Science. Dylan Taylor, Associate of Science. Potasio Taylor, Associate of Science. Jacqueline Tedelardi, Associate of Science. Reed Tyling, Associate of Science. Ariana Thomas, Associate of Science. Izora Thomas, Associate of Science. Samantha Thomas, Associate of Science. Shawnee Thomas Carthon, Associate of Science. Audrey Thorpe, Associate of Science. Ayla Hothrower, Associate of Science. Long Tew, Associate of Science. Kyle Tipton, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Michael Tish, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Christos Tomaris, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Alyssa Torres, Associate of Science. Leilani Torres, Associate of Science, cum laude. Elizabeth Traben, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Tommy Tran, Associate of Science. Lana Tso, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Theone Turner, Associate of Science, cum laude. Delaney Ewell, Associate of Science. Kaylee Abank, Associate of Science. McKenna Valasek, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Kristen Vantveer, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Katie Vidovic, Associate of Science. David Vodhanel, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Ashley Wade, Associate of Science. Shay Wagner, Associate of Science. Jessica Waynilko, Associate of Science. Amber Walters, Associate of Science, cum laude. Benjamin Weiss, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Catherine Wheeler, Associate of Science, summa cum laude. Adam Whitney, Associate of Science, cum laude. Tyasia Whitsitt, Associate of Science. Melissa Witten, Associate of Science, cum laude. Jessica Wilkalak, Associate of Science, magna cum laude. Taryn Williams, Associate of Science. Jacqueline Willis, Associate of Science. Sarah Winrod, Associate of Science. Megan Wood, Associate of Science. Nicole Woodruff, Associate of Science. Connie Wright, Associate of Science. Jordan Wright, Associate of Science. Veronica Wool, Associate of Science. Summa Cum Laude. Kevin Sia, Associate of Science. Cum Laude. Erica Yamazaki, Associate of Science. Magna Cum Laude. Vladislav Yerish, Associate of Science. Cum Laude. Margot Yerian, Associate of Science. Summa Cum Laude. Jaiwan Yu, Associate of Science. Amanda Young, Associate of Science. Haley Zanin, Associate of Science. Asel Zayed, Associate of Science. Alan Zheng, Associate of Science. Emma Zebro, Associate of Science. Nolan Zubin, Associate of Science.
What a thrill it is to celebrate the success of so many students. I am so tremendously proud of each and every one of you. It is now my pleasure to officially recognize all of our candidates for graduation. By the power and authority invested in me by the Board of Trustees and the State of Ohio, and in recognition of your having met all the requirements of the degrees and certificates for which you are candidates, I pronounce you graduates of Cuyahoga Community College with all the rights and privileges thereof. At this time, please transfer your tassel from right to left in keeping with the graduation ritual, symbolizing the completion of your graduation requirements. Again, congratulations to all of our graduates. Please give yourselves a round of applause.
Congratulations, everyone.
I now ask our board student scholar, Miss Abba Paintseal, to come to the lectern to lead our new graduates in reciting the Cuyahoga Community College Alumni Pledge.
Fellow graduates, today you are a proud member of the Cuyahoga Community College Alumni Association. Please repeat with me as we pledge our commitment to advance the college's mission and serve the community. You will find the Alumni Pledge on the screen. As I graduate, I know that Cuyahoga Community College will always be an important part of my life, and I will not forget my responsibility to ensure the future of this great institution. I am a proud graduate of Cuyahoga Community College. Please wear your alumni pin proudly, and thank you for your commitment to Cuyahoga Community College. Now I will ask Dr. Johnson to return to the lectern. Thank you.
Once again, I would like to recognize the graduates and their families and acknowledge the service to our country from our retired and active military members. Your efforts during this time have been extraordinary. I also wish to recognize the college-wide commencement team led by Angela Johnson, the media services team, and the Metropolitan Campus President, Dr. Denise McCory, and her colleagues for planning and hosting this 2021 virtual commencement, as well as our in-person ceremonies. I would like to acknowledge the hard work and commitment of the faculty and the collaborations of the staff in producing our 2021 graduates. At this time, I would like to welcome Reverend Dr. Terry Webb to return to the lectern to offer the benediction. Thank you.
Dear God, please bless and guide our graduates as they reach this milestone and as they chart new courses in their personal and professional lives. May God, who began this good work in each of you, carry it through to completion, enabling you to use your talents to the fullest. May God give you the grace to continue to make wise choices and to be faithful to your commitments. Please have mercy on these graduates as they begin their professional journey. Grant them sustained successes. Please guide them to their destinies and show them the love that blesses and is a blessing. Please touch each of their hearts with joy that grants them peace. May they find strength in the excellence of their academic preparation. Continue to bless their lives from this day on with goodness and success. Please provide them with support systems and faith to stay true to their goals, to do what is right and good. Let these graduates use their education, training, and gifts wisely in service to others. Empower them to walk into the future with empathy, altruism, determination, faith, hope, and love, so that they may use their education and training for the betterment of their families, community, cities, state, and nation. May God bless and keep you all. Go out and live your dreams. It is not over, it is just commencing. Amen.